Today, I'll be showing you how to create a custom health bar for your Roblox game. There will be a model of what I show in this video in the important link section of the description, which also has written instructions if it's easier for you. If anything shown in the video changes or does not work by the time you are watching this tutorial, please use the model from the description because I will update it to make sure that everything works properly. If you end up using it and have any feedback, let me know by posting a comment so I can continue making those better and easier for you to use in the future. During the video, we'll be creating everything from scratch, so first, make sure you have the Explorer and Properties enabled from the View tab at the top left of the screen. From here, you can click the plus button next to the Starter GUI and add a Screen GUI inside. Next, click the plus button next to the Screen GUI and add a frame inside. This is the visual aspect of a Screen GUI which will allow us to display different information, such as the current health of the player's character. Before we start adding anything onto this, we need to make sure that it shows up properly on different size screens. In order to do this, make sure you have the frame selected, then scroll down in its properties until you see position and size. You can click the arrows next to these to be shown more specific information, such as the current scale and offset of the X and Y axes. The offset property will allow you to have a fixed position or size, no matter how large a player's screen is. So for example, if I was to set the offset of the X-axis for size to be 20 pixels wide, it'll always be 20 pixels wide no matter if I'm on an iPhone 4S or something like an iPad 2. However, if I was to use scale instead, it would dynamically change its size or position depending on how large a player's monitor is. So if I set offset to 0 and I change the scale to be 0.5 or 50% because it goes on a range from 0 to 1, it'll always take up half of a player's screen horizontally, no matter the size of the monitor. So if I go back over here and change it to an iPad 2, it takes up half of the screen from left to right, along with an iPhone 4S or a Samsung Galaxy or the average laptop screen. You can use offset in conjunction with this, however I'm going to leave that up to you since it'll depend on how you're going to customize this for your game. For the sake of this tutorial, however, I'm just going to be using scale, so for now I'm going to make sure that the offset properties are set to 0 for both the X and Y axes, and once I've changed the scale a little bit, I can use the boxes on the sides and corners of the frame to manually adjust it without having to type in any numbers. So now I'm going to drag this toward the bottom of the screen and start adjusting its size to be suitable for a health bar toward the bottom, along with some text at the top to let the player know that this is their current health. So I'll bring it over here and we'll make it a little bit taller, change it on the X-axis just a little bit, and now I think that this is a suitable size for the health bar. So what I'm going to do now is quickly change its background color along with adjusting the background transparency just so we can have the health bar pop out a bit more on the frame. I am then going to rename this to be called main frame, and then you can click the plus button next to it and add another frame inside. We are now going to create the outline for the health bar, and first I'm going to follow the steps that we took earlier by changing the offset to 0 and adjusting the scale just a little bit so that it won't look goofy once we check how it looks on different sized monitors later. And now I'm just going to adjust its width a little bit here and then change its height. And now that we're at this level here, this seems pretty reasonable. So now what I'm going to do is rename this frame to be called outline. Then I'm going to scroll up in its properties and adjust the background color to match up with the main frame. And then I'm going to change the border color to something that's really easy to see, which in this case will be yellow. And I'm going to change the border size pixel to be 7. And now we have an outline for the health bar. And this is going to allow the player to see how large the health bar is. Because when their health changes, we want to make sure that the actual health bar inside will move from left to right or right to left, depending on how much health they have. So now that we have this, I am going to select the outline and then hold Control D on Windows or Command D if you're on Mac, and it will create a duplicate version of it. I am now going to rename this one to be health bar, and then I'm going to change its border size pixel to 0, because we don't want an outline for this anymore, and then change the background color to red. Now, if you are unable to see the health bar that you just created here, what you could do is go into its properties and scroll down until you see Z index. This number will decide which GUI elements show up over one another. So in this case, the outline Z index is set to 1, and so is the health bars. If I was to set the health bar's Z index to something like 0, it is now going to show up behind the outline because it's a lower number. So all we'll really need to do, if you didn't adjust it for the outline, is set this to something maybe even just like 2, and then it should show up over the outline that we created. Now that we've created the health bar, before we start writing the script, let's add a text label so that it can display right on the health bar how much health the player has. So I'm going to click the plus button next to the mainframe and add a text label inside. Once again, I'm going to follow the same steps, scrolling down here and adjusting the offset to 0, changing the scale, and now we can start customizing this one a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that the Z index of this one is even higher, so I'll set this to 3, so that now it shows up over the health bar, and I'm going to scroll down until I see where it says text. I'm going to change this text to be 100 just by default, but in the script we're going to change this dynamically as the player loses or gains health. Additionally, I am going to change the text size to be 100, and then I'm going to make this larger here, like so. I'll just do this just in case we have larger health values. Drag it right over the health bar, and now I'm going to scroll up to the top and change the background transparency to 1. And actually I'm going to scroll back down and change the text color to also be yellow, just so it can be seen more easily on that color. And now that we have this, we can start by writing the script, or actually, let's just rename this so we know what it is once we write the script. So I'm just going to call this health text label, and actually let's add a folder into the mainframe. We'll add 2 folders so that we can organize these even better. So the first folder, I'm going to call it text labels, and the second folder I'm going to call frames. I'm now going to drag the text label into the text labels folder and the outline and health bar frames into the frames folder. Take note that if you do want to adjust the position or size of any of these objects, you may need to take them or drag it outside of the folder back into the main frame, because when it is inside of a folder, it technically doesn't have a position or size in relation to the folder. And sorry if that was a bit confusing, but basically, just make sure that it's not inside of the folder if you want to adjust its position or size again. And now that we have this, we could go back over to the mainframe, click the plus button next to it, and add a local script inside. We can then get rid of the text in here and get started. Also, if you do want to change the size of the text in the script editor, you can hold Control if you're on Windows or Command if you're on Mac and scroll up or down and change it to whatever size you would like. So the first thing we're going to start with is finding a way to reference the player that has this screen GUI, because eventually we're going to need to know what their character's health is in order to update this properly. So what I'm going to do is go to the top, and on line 1 I'm going to say local players is equal to game:get service, and inside the parentheses I'm going to add quotation marks and type in players. Here we have created a variable, which will basically allow us to make a word equal to something else in the game that takes a lot longer to type out or access in general. This way, it'll speed up our coding process, and it'll also make it easier to make any changes in the future in case we need to change what this is equal to or what we called it. So on the next line, I am then going to reference what we created on line 1 by saying local player is equal to players.localPlayer. And now the local player is basically going to be the person who is running this current local script or has this screen GUI. So when we are talking about the local player, it's going to be different for everyone. And this reference is going to allow us to access their character once we start writing some functions down below. But before we get to that, we need to talk about or define some of the other things that we created inside of our screen GUI. So we'll create some variables for those next. And I'm going to start by saying local mainframe is equal to script.parent. And we are able to reference it in this way because the local script is directly inside of the mainframe. If it's a little bit confusing, you can always click on it and go into its properties, and there will be a parent property there. So what we could do from here is reference the folders inside of the mainframe. So now I could say local text labels and local frames and make it equal to going into the mainframe and looking for something called text labels. And for the frames, I'll do the exact same thing. We're looking through the mainframe and looking for the folder that is called frames. After this, we are then going to reference different things within these folders because we will need to change these later on. So next, I am going to reference the health text label, so I'll just say health text, and make it equal to looking through the text labels folder for something that is called health text label. Afterward, I'm going to be looking for the health bar frame. So I'm going to say local health bar is equal to frames dot health bar. Now that we're at this point, we can start creating some functions to do things automatically for us. So down below, I'm going to create the first function, which will update the health bar for us. So I'm going to say local function, and I'm going to call this function update health bar. I'm then going to add these parentheses afterward and click enter, and it'll automatically create this end so that once this function is activated, it knows where it needs to stop. Down below this function, I'm going to create a brand new one, which will be activated whenever the character respawns. So I'm going to say local function, character respawned, do the same thing, add parentheses, and hit enter. We're going to use this function to activate the update health bar function in two separate ways. But first, we need to find a way to activate the character respawn function. So to do this, we can go down a few lines and start by referencing the player from line 2. So what I could say down here is player.characterAdded::connect, and inside the parentheses, I'm going to type in the name of the function, which in this case will be character respawn. Here I'm using an event, which is going to be listening for something to happen. And in this case, it's going to listen for whenever the player's character is added into the game, whenever they respawn by any means. And whenever that happens, it is automatically going to connect it to the function that is called character respawn. When this happens, it's going to pass some data through, which in this case will be the new character. So we can put into these parentheses here a brand new parameter that will allow us to reference the data that was sent through. However, since we are writing this from a local script, which is given to the player upon them joining the game, there's a chance that their character might have already been loaded, which means that this event will never be activated, so then this function will never run. In order to account for this, we can add an if-then statement below this line, where we could basically check if the player's character already exists, then we can go ahead and activate that function from here. And inside of these parentheses, we are just going to send through player.character. And the reason we have to specify the data we want to send through here is because we are not automatically connecting it from an event like we are on this line. So now that we have that, we can start referencing different things inside of the character respawn function. But the first of which will actually be updating the health bar. So at the very top here, I'm just going to say update health bar and add those parentheses there, and this will just automatically activate or call the function. So whenever the character is respawned, their health bar will be updated first. And after that happens, the code below it here will run. So I'm going to start by referencing the character's humanoid by saying local humanoid is equal to character : wait for a child, and inside the parentheses, I'm going to add quotation marks and type in humanoid. We are referencing this so that we are able to access the character's current health, because the humanoid is an instance or an item that has all of those different properties. So there you can figure out the character's health, walk speed, along with a bunch of other things. And similar to what we did over here on line 26, we are going to connect this to the update health bar function by using another event. And in this case, we can say humanoid.health change, so whenever the health of the character changes, we're going to connect it to the function called called update health bar. And the reason we are activating the function twice and not just having it be one or the other is so that the health bar will be able to continuously update whenever their health is changed and not just when the character respawns. Because if we didn't have this part set up here, it would basically be stuck at the starting health of their character. And now that we have that, we can move on over to the update health bar function and continue. So at the very top of this function, we are going to reference some of the things we did down here, including the character and the humanoid. So again, I'm going to start by saying player.character. Right below it, I'm going to say character : colon weight for child. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to add humanoid. And then we can get towards some of the final steps. But I guess if you're not interested in creating a sort of animated health bar, and let's just say you want the number to update, then all you'll need to do from this point is to reference the text and then type this down. So we could say health text because this will reference the text label. And then we are going to say .text because we are now accessing the text property of the text label. Sorry, there's a lot of repeated words here, but if I select the text label and I scroll down its properties, it has one called text. And we'll be using this to automatically change it to the current health of the humanoid. But because this won't always round to a perfect whole number, we are going to say math.round and put this inside of parentheses so it will always show up properly and not show a weird decimal number that'll look really confusing. And now that we have this part out of the way, we need to find a way to make this red bar behind the text label actually move left to right, and maybe even change color depending on how much health they have. In order to do this, we will need to utilize the tween service. So I'm going to go outside of this function and reference that really quick. So I'm going to say local tween service and make it equal to game::get service and type in not players, type in tween service. Right below this, we're going to need to define some new information so that the script will know how long it needs to take, along with some other properties that might not be super useful for the health bar, but it's there if you want to customize it. So I'm going to start by saying local info is equal to tweeninfo.new. Then I'm going to add these parentheses at the end and just hit enter a bunch so that we have enough room for all of these different properties. The first thing we're going to add here is a number, and this is going to be the duration that the animation will last for. So in this case, we want it to be really quick so that it doesn't take too long to update for the player. So I'm just going to set it to 0.2 seconds. I will then add a comma after this to separate it from the next property that we define. On the next line, I'm going to adjust its easing style. So basically, this will be the way that the animation moves or looks. Yeah. So here we're going to start by saying enum.easingStyle, and we're going to change this to linear. And I'll provide some different things on the screen. I'll provide a graphic on the screen that shows what all of the different options look like. And I'll also put the Developer Hub article for that in the description below too if you're interested. After this one, we are going to need to define the easing direction. So this will be the direction it moves in. So here, I'm going to change this one to be enum.easingDirection, and I'm just going to change this to be in. Afterward, we are able to determine if this animation will repeat more than once. And in this case, we don't want it to repeat, so I'm just going to set it to 0. The amount of times it will repeat. And afterward, we're able to let the script know, does this need to be reversed? In this case, we could say false. We won't need it to reverse at all. So if it needs to reverse. And the last property we'll define is the amount of delay before being able to go to the next tween or animation. In this case, we will just set it to 0, any delay before next tween. So now that we have this defined, we can go down into the update health bar function and write a couple more things, and then we'll be good to go. Now that we've created the info over here, we need to set a goal for the health bar. So now I'm going to create a brand new table that is called local goal. And I'm going to make it equal to a table here with the nice squiggly brackets. Hit enter a few times, and now we can define one property that we need to change. In this case, it is going to be the size of the health bar. So I could say size and make it equal to udim2.new, and then we could define a bunch of different values in here. Now what we put in here is basically what we looked at inside of the properties earlier. So if I select the health bar in the Explorer and I scroll down all the way here, if you saw at the beginning how it shows up like this before we click the arrows to be shown the specific details, this is pretty much the information that we'll need to put into these parentheses. Now there are two sets of brackets. On the very left, we have the scale for the x-axis, and right next to it, this 0 is for the offset of the x-axis. In the next pair of brackets, we have the exact same thing except for the y-axis instead. So if you are instead using a vertical health bar, you can follow the exact same idea that we're going with here, except with using the y-axis instead of the x-axis. All right, but now let's go back into the script and set this up. So the first one I'm actually going to leave blank for right now because we're going to actually create another variable right above this so that it knows exactly what it needs to do. So right next to this, I'll just put a placeholder here. This will be the X scale. Right next to it, we're going to add 0 because we are not using any offset. Afterward, I'm just going to reference the health bar. So I'll just say health bar dot scale, or sorry, health bar dot size dot y dot scale. So I'll just take the existing value that we have from it, and for the last one I'll just put 0. So the reason I left this one blank for right now is because we actually need to do a little bit of math. And to do this, we're going to create a variable called %. And here we're just going to divide the current health of the humanoid or the character and divide it by the maximum health that they are able to have. This will give us a percentage. So let's say that the current health of the humanoid is at 50 and their max health is 100. That'll give us 50%. And it'll let the health bar know, and actually I gotta drag this back into the mainframe. It'll let the health bar know that, okay, it needs to be at around this mark. However, the issue with this right now is that if we were to set it to 0.5, it's not going to be exactly in the middle because of the default value that we set up for this property. Because 50% of 0.794 is not 0.5. So what we need to do is take the existing property over here. So again, you can select the health bar frame, scroll down until you see size, open up the x-axis, or if you have a vertical health bar, open up the y-axis, then select the number that you have set up for scale and copy it. Then you can go over here to the end of this line and we can multiply it by that number. And this is the asterisk, by the way, so you can hold shift and click 8 in order to get that. And just to explain how this works a little bit, let me take out the calculator. So if I was to multiply 0.794 by the current health of the humanoid, so let's say they currently had 50 health and I multiply it by 0.794, I will get 39.7. If I then divide this by the max health of the humanoid, which in this case would be 100, I'll get 0.397. So if I copy this number and I go over to the health bar and I adjust its scale to that number, it is going to be halfway done. And sorry, I think I just realized that when I have it like this, it looks a little bit confusing. So here we are multiplying this number by the quotient, or I guess the end product that we received from this. And oh gosh, I've probably explained this really badly, but for now, let's go back down over here and let's change X scale to instead be the % that we got from this equation. And now that we have the goal defined, what we could do right below it is create the tween, or create the animation. So now what I'm going to do is say local tween is equal to tween service, because we referenced that over here. We created the variable for that on line 12. And then we are going to create a new tween, and we are going to put 3 different values into these parentheses. The first one is going to be the GUI object that we are going to animate. In this case, it will be the health bar. Next, we're going to input the information that we defined, which will determine the duration along with all this other stuff. So next, we are going to type in info. And finally, we are going to input the end goal. So now I could just type in goal, and now we have a tween created. So all we have to do right below it is type in tween : play, and then add these parentheses here. And now the animation will play whenever this function has been activated. Now, for those of you who want to see the color of the health bar change, I'll show you how to do that right below this in a moment. But first, let's test this out to make sure that it works properly. So I'm going to click on home, click the arrow right below play, and select play here. And now once I take any damage, this health bar will be adjusted. So there we go, 50 health, it goes halfway to the center. 25, and now it's getting lower. And as you can see, when it is regenerating, it's slowly going up. It has that animation there. If I do this, and one more time, and the health bar goes down all the way to 0, and I'm able to do it all over again. Yep, there you go. So now we can make it change color. Yay! So we can go back in the script and add a couple more things down here at the bottom if you would like to. So in order to accomplish this, we could just check for the current percentage of the player's health. So let's add some if-then statements. So if the percentage is, let's just say, below 20%, and by default that'll be below 20 health, Then we're just going to set the background color of the health bar to a different color. So background color, and in this case it uses color 3 values, which normally operate on a 0 to 1 scale. So in this case it would either be like, 0, maybe 0.5 and 1. But just to make it a bit easier, we are going to use color 3 from RGB. So I'm going to say color 3 dot from RGB, and you can either click on this color wheel here and select a color, but another way you could do it is by going back to the game, clicking on part at the top of the screen once you have the home tab selected, making sure the part is selected, and then going into its properties. For example, you could change the brick color to something random like New Yeller, and then the color that you get right here, a few lines below it, you can copy these numbers and then paste it into this section right here. In this case, I'm just going to change this one to be blue, so I'll set it to 0, 0, 170, and then I'll adjust the other ones to different colors. So let's say that the percentage of the player's health was not below 0.2, or 20%, then we could say else if. So if that wasn't the case, then we could check if the percentage is, let's just say, it's at least below 50%. Then we're going to change the health bar's background color 3 to be made equal to color 3 dot from RGB, and we'll just change it to green. So 0, 170, 0. And finally, let's just say it's anything above that. So else if percent is greater than 0.5, then we're going to change the health bar's background color 3. Whoops. background color 3 to be made equal to color 3 dot from RGB, and we'll set it to the normal color we have it at right now, or not normal color, the default color we had it set up to, which is at red or 170. And now that we have this going, we can go back into the game and test if that works as well. Or unless, oh wait, no, I was just being a silly, because I was not supposed to capitalize the letter G. That is my bad. Don't worry, I'll add text on the screen when I'm editing the video to make sure that you don't make the same mistake as I did right there. And now that we have that, we can go back in and play test it, and it should be good to go. So if I take 25 damage, it'll bring me down to there. Still have the red color. If I go below that, I have green, and if I go below 20%, I will have a blue health bar. And let's see, we can let it regen up a little bit, so I'll speed it up. Oh, and actually, I think I know why it's not going automatically at that. It's probably because the percentage is taking the overall scale into account. So what we could do instead is just say humanoid health divided by humanoid max health. So if I just toss this in here really quick, then it'll do it at the proper values. And if we wanted to, we could just add a different variable here, which is just like actual health, and make it equal to that. And then we could substitute it for the percentage. And now if we go back in here, it's going to change it at the exact value. So if we go over here, go to 50. Wow, I actually didn't do it that time. Oh yeah, because it has to be below the value. It can't be equal to it. So now if I speed this one up, and there we go. It changed it right on the mark. And yeah, now we have a nice functional health bar, and I also forgot to add the current health text there, but I'll add that later. Anyway, since you've made it this far, post a comment down below to suggest what tutorial I should create next, along with any feedback about what I could do better to make these tutorials more enjoyable and easier for you to learn from. Remember to like the video and subscribe if this helped, along with checking out my Roblox Studio tutorial series that will have dozens of other useful videos through the card at the top right of the screen, or via the playlist in the description below. Anyway, I hope that this helped you guys out, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, night, or whatever time it is where you are, and I hope to see you next time, so bye-bye!